if you've ever played a competitive card game and you've ever had to deal with bannings or anything like that, it is incredibly hard to keep up with from their side of things. Incredibly difficult to balance.
Borderline impossible.
They make these cards years in advance, and they have a testing pool that is not the 400 billion players that play their game that find problems like that. They don't have access to something like that before they release something, so there will be mistakes, there will be problems, there will be issues, and this is their attempt to balance them, but they are not going to get it right all the time. There are going to be formats you don't like, there are going to be formats you love. You just have to find your niche in each format that arises and make the best of whatever it is, and trust in the company that's creating the card game that you play and that you like to play. Because there are too many people that are like, oh, I can't play Oldhim anymore. Guess I'm just not going to play Flesh and Blood anymore. LSS sucks. You know, it's like, if that is your fragility in this game, then we don't need you here playing the game anyway, because this game is going to be here for a long time. There are going to be formats that are down here, there are going to be formats that are up here, and that's going to be player by player. Some people love Chain, they loved Vegas format, you know, and some people hate Chain, they hated Vegas format. So it's player by player. So just enjoy what you enjoy and find a way to make the best of it. So.
Hey guys, what's going on? TheCardGuyz here. We have a special guest with us. If you guys don't recognize on the screen in front of you, we have the Michael Lau from Hometown TCG Ascent. Appreciate you chilling with us tonight, talking about some pretty hot topic, I would say so. So happy to have you here. And obviously we have the homestay individuals. We have Josh. Hey Josh, I know you're pretty excited about all this stuff going on with the ban and restriction announcement. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well, and I'm pretty excited to talk about all the changes. And I think the metagame has swung quite wide open, and it'll be interesting to explore things leading up to the Pro Tour.
I agree. We have Neil. Hey Neil.
What's up, guys? I'm just gonna keep doubling down on Runeblade.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey Alex, how was your vacation?
It was good. Came back to this massacre of a ban list and turned on my phone to a bunch of notifications. And
were there any peer runners on your cruise ship?
No.
People that are like, leave without me.
No, I didn't see any.
No peer runners?
No.
Oh, man.
Cheering on the peer runners is, is like True's wise activity.
Yeah, they basically put out a big announcement that was like, when you hear that giant horn, you might as well stay where you are, because you're not getting on the boat. So.
Oh, okay.
And everybody else, a moment of silence for Nathan.
It's hard to out here.
Oh man! Oh god! Hey,
oh
Nathan.
yeah!
Whatever that title's worth now.
Oh
right.
man! Other than Scaletta getting the axe, how you doing, Nate? You doing all right?
Yeah, I used my cold full blood sheet Skeleton to buy me an Uber to my mailbox, but other than that, been making it. It's rough, but like Josh said, even as a Visserai player, I'm all for these changes because it's opened so many different things up. 100%.
So much fun. Michael, lastly, how are you feeling just overall before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's video? How are you feeling going into the ban and restriction announcement and getting to test for these next 2-3 weeks?
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm kind of happy that they gave us an extra week to play around with this, so I do appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Guys, if you don't mind, if you haven't subscribed, click subscribe. It takes you literally, you could have already done it by now. So why not? Yep. If you guys also don't know, we have pretty cool Discord community we've been building up over here at TheCardGuyz, and also we have a Patreon we'd love for you guys to check out. We are building a neat community over there, trying to help players, achieve what they want in this game. So check those out in the links in the description below. Anything else before we get into everything? Alex, we good?
I think that's it. Yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, Josh, let us know things.
All right, so for those of you living under a rock,
A rock is right.
there was a BNR announcement, or on a cruise ship, different thing. LFS published this BNR announcement a week earlier. 4 changes here. Awakening. So there's 2 categories of cards. Banned cards are just straight up banned. Suspended cards are not allowed to be used in competitive play until some condition is met. And then every other card is legal, right? Okay, so we have Awakening being banned. We have Autumn's Touch, all colors of it. Suspended until Bravo reaches LL, which will be very soon, I'm guessing. Because he's like literally like 30 points away or something like that. Bloodchief Skeleton is suspended until Visserai becomes LL in 2027. Seeds of Agony
That's some bullshit.
goes from banned to suspended until Chain becomes LL. So this effectively is not a change here, right?
No,
So
they just wanted to make it clarified.
There's basically 3 main changes here, okay? So just with these 3 changes, a lot has happened. And we're going to be using the favorite tool of, internet communities, the tier maker, the tier list, to help us structure our discussion today.
Let's live so, tiers.
So we have all 16 legal heroes here, and we have 5 categories here. So a +2 means that a hero got significantly better with these changes. +1 means a hero got a bit better. 0 means they stayed roughly the same. -1 means they got a bit worse. -2 means they got significantly worse. And then the closer they are to the left, the higher they are, or the closer they are to the tier above them. Okay, so I guess the first thing we should do is try to establish like a couple anchors, and then it'll be easier to fill things out, and we can move things around as it goes.
I've got the best anchor for -2, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, and we'll defer to best Visserai player NA to tell us what changed and the impacts of those changes.
So with I mean, it's obviously a -2. It's a no-brainer, but with Scalata going away, it took away the beefiness. They lost, 2 health basically. They lost the deck became very linear. The whole point of playing Viscerai was it was a flexible rune blade, not just a in-your-face rune blade, and that's completely gone. There's no point in ever playing Yellow Read the Runes or more than 1 or 2 copies of Ninth Blade or anything like that. That whole OTK package is out of the deck. In comes Arknight Shard and whatever you can scrape together to make a fancy little Mordred Tide, Revel in Runeblood turn, have 1 or good turns, but also with those 1 or 2 turns, there's equally bad turns that are going to associate with it. So like you get 3 Amplify Arknights in your hand or whatever, and it'll offset that lesser spike damage because you have no explosive potential with the Sonata. So Viscerai has to go aggro, and it's a one-legged chain, basically what it is.
One-legged chain.
Deck also gets much less defensive now because you don't have the 2 blocks from Scaletta, and you're just an attacking deck now. So
exactly, yep.
And your deck doesn't really utilize Tunic that well.
No,
so
it's blue or nothing. So like literally, if I was gonna build a Viscerai deck, I'd run deep blue.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the armor. It's just a backup blue for when you
brick. No Weave?
No, because whenever you've played your attack and non-attack, you no longer need the energy because you're just swinging Rosetta anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have a blue, your turn's over, or you don't have a turn. So I would use
So sad.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned Chain. I think that's the next anchor that we should put here.
Yeah, definitely. Where Visserai is lacking in that one leg, Chain got his third leg. So I mean, he definitely either high +1 or +2. Honestly,
So
I think I think subsequently with Starvo getting hit the way it did with his consistency issues that you would assume now, it helps Chain obviously because now Visserai can't just OTK anymore, so Visserai is no bueno. I think it benefited the most just because of other decks getting hit quite a bit. So
I'm gonna argue for a +1 here
sure.
and see what you guys think.
Sure.
I think the bans might have allowed a bit more fatigue in the format, and people are going to know that Chain is getting a bit of a boost considering what's happening. And if fatigue gets a boost, then Chain obviously loses a bit. But is Chain powerful enough to get over the fatigue? That remains to be seen. And is fatigue going to be good? Because how good is Prism? But I would argue for a +1, but I can definitely see a +2 depending on what you guys think.
We'll put him in high +1 for now. I think this will become. We should talk about a couple other heroes, and then it'll be easier to come back and talk about Chain because Chain's place is kind of dependent on some of the other heroes here.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess we should fill in the maybe anchors isn't the right term, but the pillars, the old pillars of the format.
Sure.
What actually got hit? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about Starvo here. So clearly he got hit, but the question is like, to what degree did he get hit? Right. So
-1 would be. I mean,
-1 sounds correct. Like he got
Definitely.
hit, but he didn't get neutered the way that Visserai did.
Right.
yeah, you just throw in some other Earth cards and you don't have Awakening anymore. Like you're going to be weaker against probably aggro decks that are really trying to attack your face. But other than that, he's going to do the same thing.
Yeah, not having Autumn's Touch is an interesting ban because it takes away a lot of the 3 blocks in the deck. So Starvo has to even
3
more.
Yep.
Starvo had to even more double down on trying to go for the casino route just to compensate because there's no way without those 9 blocks you're going fatigue. You just don't have the cards for it, or at least like
not unless you
just no way to-
sacrifice the casino.
Correct. And at that point, you might as well just play a different Guardian.
So maybe that brings up a point. In Michael Hamilton's build, it ran 9 Autumn's Touch, right?
Right.
Also, don't
Right.
think
And
it
it
ran
wasn't-
Awakening at all.
It didn't run Awakening, but that's
No.
because he was a fatigue deck.
Right. So like even the versions of the deck that were switching to a more fatiguey strategy were just upping their counts of Autumn's Touch, and I mean like
Just for the extra block.
right. I mean it's just the only Earth 3 block, and they got rid of it. So obviously it hits other decks as well, like Briar and
I think it actually hurts
Oldhim,
Oldhim a lot more than people are thinking. I think it hurts that deck a lot. But,
it hurts the Oakenold in its deck specifically because
Yeah.
they don't have the Earths to replace, and they don't want 2 blocks in their deck. So yeah, that hurts them for sure.
So Oldhim was at like U.S. Nationals that time. Oldhim was considered like a tier 1.5, tier 1 deck. However, with the introduction of Starvo, like we kind of saw him fall by the wayside. He also has a pretty poor matchup against OTK Visserai as well, right? So do you think that with Visserai going away, even though he lost a core card, do you think Oldhim is still here, or especially because he's considered the fatigue deck, right? So if Chain is more popular, Oldhim might be more in demand.
Yeah,
I think
definitely got hurt.
I think he stays neutral because of the fact of just how the meta is going to shape up. You hurt consistency, but like you said, you're a fatigue deck, and you play the 2 best equipment in the game, being Crown of Seas and Rampart. So like, I don't know.
A lot of heroes don't have solutions for that.
And in card games in general, there's usually staple decks or heroes or whatever card game you're playing that kind of create barriers to entry for other decks at all times. So like Prism's going to keep things in check constantly. There's always got to be that fatigue deck that keeps other things in check constantly, and Oldhim's always been that guy. And so he lost his 3-block Earth card, which is going to hurt his counterattack big time, in my opinion, because they could usually just kind of wait for an old man to show up and kind of try to swing back in their favor a little bit. But yeah, not having the 3 blocks I think it's going to be huge to hurt them.
You briefly mentioned Prism, and we have a Prism main here.
Michael.
So I would like to get your thoughts on where you think Prism is, considering that there were no direct changes to your hero. However, it's more of like a metagame contextual puzzle here. If the 2 pillars got hurt, like traditionally you had a good matchup against Starvo and a poor matchup against Visserai. With these 2 leaving, and maybe some aggro decks like Lightning Lexi, Channel Mount Briar,
Katsu.
Aggro, Katsu, like these 3 here, Raiden, Bolton, these 4 here. If these 4, which I believe these 4 all got, a decent buff with Awakening going away, where do you see Prism currently here?
Yeah, Prism really thrives on, hunting Guardians, and Runeblades really thrive on hunting Prism, and that's where you get that magic triangle going on. So I would think instinctually she's either a low 0 or high -1 right now. The Awakening's gone, but you've awakened a lot of aggro decks for that precise reason. So I see either a very high -1 or a very low 0.
So I think we think that Chain is going to become one of the more popular decks. So I've gotten mixed responses every single time I ask this. The Prism versus Chain matchup, what is that currently like?
Yes. So based off of the current configuration that a lot of Prisms run, a bunch of auras mean 0 pressure on Chain. The game generally lasts 9 or 10 turns at most, which means you're spending your first 1-2 turns slapping down a few auras, and then you go on defensive mode. And Chain loves that. He's like, I will keep my full grip, and I will just smack you around every single turn. I don't think any hero besides Oldhim is really equipped with the cards and equipment mainly to be able to handle that kind of pressure. Mind you, a lot of aura prisms, they block for 2 or 0, which is very, very bad. You could try to shore it up with, let's say, Herald of Judgment. I'm a big fan of that, but Chain just laughs at it and throws Husk and continues on with his day. And you had to spend 2 cards to send that. Keep that in mind. So you probably took a lot of damage just to eat his Husk. And unless you do that in one of the very early turns, like turn 4, you actually lose out on overall value for that. So Chain is the boogeyman for Prism, I would say. Moving into this new meta kind of reminds me of the Monarch days, where you sit down, flip your heroes, and you say, okay, my goal is to survive. That's it.
So you would say that Prism may have to change their deck configuration from maybe a few less auras, a few more heralds.
Or you could play tankier. Is there a way that you can just play like a lot of defense or actually play tank Prism?
You can play the Tyler Horsepool special.
Play even tankier. It's going to go in one of 2 ways. Either go very tanky, or even explore the option of running a traditional Prism, where you're able to send big enough attacks that are disruptive enough that forces some form of interaction, that they can't just hold their full grip of cards because there's a threat of a tome and the explosiveness of that. So those are kind of 2 things that I'm considering at this time.
Okay. So we briefly mentioned that the 4 aggro decks over here, Lexi, Briar, Katsu, Bolton, they all kind of benefit from Awakening and Starvo going away. And,
I think more so they benefit from Visserai not existing.
Okay, can you explain it or talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Visserai preyed on other aggro decks because it could sit back and block and kill you in one turn. So like in my experience, Nathan can back me up here if I misspeak on anything. In every experience I had playing against Lexi, Briar, or Katsu, you just stop the on-hit effects by blocking with your hand, keep your cards, build up your rune chance, and kill them. They don't have the armor or
They have no armor.
the disruption to stop you from doing what you're going to do inevitably, and they don't have the damage output if you block their main threats, like Katsu's, whelming gust waves, surging strikes, and these things, and Lexi's on hit effects, because they usually have like a couple arrows per turn, only one that you care about that creates frostbites and does extra whatever it is. And so they just had a really hard time pushing through and killing you. And as you can imagine, Starvo has a hard enough time pushing through Visserai, and he has all the disruption and all the damage. And Visserai could still keep that roughly 50-50, maybe even better in a good pilot's hand. So playing against a deck like Katsu or Lexi or Bolton or whatever it is, Bolton needed to use its sabers to try to compete with the combo, maybe combo faster than you did or whatever. So I think all of them get a real big boost from Visserai not existing.
So Lexi is kind of I guess was the most viable aggro deck of the previous format. We saw that there was
arguably Briar.
Yeah, both of these are arguably the best aggro deck. I guess now the best aggro deck might be Chain, but so we used to see that Lexi was primarily run as a lightning build. However, because the main reason being that if you went ice against Prism, you basically lost. So if we see Prism kind of declining in popularity, might we see some different Lexi builds?
Lightning Lexi's good. I don't think we'll see any more ice, but Lightning Lexi is, the spike turns on 3 of a kind. It can be just disruptive enough, like with fatigue shots and stuff like that, to really do a number on Chain. It's just Husk. Like it
is the impact. Husk is
that's
the
a
card
changer. If the Husk didn't exist, you could compete with Chain in his 14 card hands, but
so
Husk didn't exist. Chain isn't a deck,
right?
So one of the best matchups for Lexi was against Visserai. So with Visserai going away, is that enough? Like, is the Awakening ban enough to offset the Visserai's one of their best matchups? They're going to disappear.
Oh yeah, because you can actually play it now.
I agree with that.
Because Starvo is going to still be very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll stick Lexi in +1 then. Okay, so we now have a couple heroes in each of the categories, so it'll be a little bit easier for us to fill out, because we have our anchors and we have some pillars there as well. So which hero do you want to talk about next?
Knock out the other 3 aggro heroes.
All right, so let's talk about Briar. So the predominant build nowadays is the Mount Heroic Briar because of the Ball Lightning ban ever since around a little bit after Nats.
Autumn's Touch got hit. You lose a Blue Earth, which was pretty good.
You just replace it with another Blue Earth that was just getting pitched, right?
Yeah,
it reduces the block by 1.
Sure.
That's all. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
Right. But so traditionally, what was a good matchup for Briar, and what was a bad matchup for Briar?
Really good against Prism. I mean, that's for sure.
Really good against Prism. Bad against Starvo.
Kind of bad against Starvo.
Bad against Ice Lexi.
Ice Lexi, but that won't be around. So
Oldhim.
Starvo is probably. It was like a slightly favored, probably, but now with Awakening's gone, I mean, she can just go without being punished from Awakening. Oldhim, you have the anti-fatigue with Evergreen.
That's the main thing. Without Awakening, like, you can play a Channel Mount Heroic, keep it for 2 turns, and not get punished by Awakening. And like,
right.
Briar's going to run away with the game at that point.
Right.
Yeah,
Or has the ability to run away with the game at that point.
one of the key counter plays to when the opponent puts down Mount Heroic is that is the turn that you apply either lethal damage or a giant on hit effect, so that they have to block with cards from hand, and every card you take from their hand is like 7 damage, right? So so that's Briar definitely benefits from the Awakening Band. Although she gets hurt a little bit by the Earth card getting banned. Autumn's Touch. All right, I think it's safe to just stick her in plus one.
I think +1's correct.
Also, if she runs Butts Head with Chain, the Carrion Husk can make a huge difference.
Sure. All right, we have probably the dark horse here. If I had to pick a dark horse here, Katsu
Don't get my
was
hopes up.
in the RTN format, like leading up to Nationals, was not a bad deck. Briar kind of just did better things than Katsu, but Katsu was never a bad deck, but it was just a little bit ouch.
My deck in RTN season was broken, but I digress.
So is it just similar to Lexi and Briar getting
It's a little different.
benefit?
It's a little different. With Crown of Seeds and Rampart being a thing, it makes the most represented deck, or so you would assume. It hurts because they can literally just block both of your Kodachis, and you can't get anything going with even bigger than that. They can hit breakpoints easier with those two cards. So it's a very big uphill battle for Katsu against the Guardian decks. Obviously, versus everything else, that's a little different. So it's stuck with, you have really good matchups, and then you have I don't want to see a Guardian matchup. And
so I think we're talking about two different builds here. So there is the traditional aggro Katsu running, the Surging Strike line, Ancestral Empowerment, Snatch, and Torn of Tempo, things like that, right?
Dragon Scalers.
Yeah. And then I think the build you're talking about is the even bigger than that. You're trying to do combo shortcuts, less reliant on Surging Strike. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh no, it's just a straight up aggro deck. It plays all that stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, like, it's possible to move even bigger than that to like the sideboard against those heroes.
Sure.
And play more like red cards that are like straight up attacks, right? Rather than relying on Kodachis to
it's possible, but it just takes
to
away
play
from the
even bigger than that.
consistency of the deck. So, I don't know. I put it down just because Rampart and Crown Exceeds exist. I don't think that. I would put it at a 0. By just personal experience.
You don't think it benefited enough from
correct?
I think we might be looking at this incorrectly. I think the Katsu definitely got better, but but I agree with what Kyle's saying in the terms of that. I don't think it's going to be viable, but that's not what we're trying to figure out here. Is that we're trying to figure out, did it improve or did it lose or did it gain nothing?
I don't think it gained anything.
I feel like it stays at 0 because while Starvo is going to go down, Oldhim is going to go up, and it's pretty much the same issue as before, right?
Right, but that's also, we're making a lot. We're having, this is the point where we've got a lot of heroes on the list now, and we're starting to come up with some kind of theories on what the format's going to look like, and so we're starting to look at the broader picture, and saying that Oldhim's going to be bigger deck is we're just assuming at the moment that deck X or deck Y is going to be better, and all of these heroes are very dependent on who does well. In my opinion, there's two walls that every deck is going to have to hurdle. Can it beat Chain with Carrion Husk, and can it beat the Guardians? And then Prism is just doing Prism things. But Katsu, Briar, and Lexi all have a very similar game plan in terms of I want to go wide and kill you fast.
Yep.
And I think they all benefited from, like, if we're going to argue that Lexi and Briar both benefited, I think we should argue that Katsu benefits as well. But because I think that they both they both get hurt very much by Crown of Seeds and Rampart as well. Maybe not to the extent that Katsu does, because it does rely on hitting multiple times. But it also got new tricks and stuff in its deck, and it hasn't had a chance to show that yet because it's just been so oppressed.
Yeah, there's some unexplored,
Right.
Like people have played against Lexi and Briar for the last 6 months, but I don't think many people have more than 5 or 6 matches against Katsu in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So there's some dark horse potential there. I guess we'll just put him like on the lower side of
Yeah.
+1.
It's somewhere around the 0 to +1.
So these 3 heroes all have something in common with this guy here, Bolton. However, Bolton, I would argue, is ahead of these 3 because he has the because he has the ability to play Saber combo as well. So Raiden Bolton was always a very good deck. However, it wasn't an excellent deck. That was kind of the problem, is when Chain was in the format, Chain had a couple silver bullet cards against Bolton, and he kind of played, and Seeds of Agony was just, annoying for a deck that's mainly red cards. So when Chain was top dog, Bolton was suppressed. When Briar was top dog, Bolton was also suppressed. Raiden Bolton was suppressed because you were playing too fair, and the embodiments could stack up quite a bit. Whenever you wanted to have a big turn as Bolton, you basically had to give the Briar player 3 embodiments. Mm-hmm. And you never, and the Bolton player actually, in general, Bolton doesn't have as much armor as Dorinthia, so you can't even have that pivot turn. Dorinthia actually can have a very good pivot turn against Briar because you can like throw your fridge in front of it, give them no embodiments. But when Bolton wanted to have like a 4 or 5 card hand to strike back with like either a V or Lumina or whatever, the Briar player would have like 3 embodiments. So during the Briar meta, Bolton was suppressed. And now with the Starvo meta, the Starvo suppressed all the aggro heroes. So Bolton again was suppressed by Starvo. All right. And Raiden Bolton was a touch too slow to kill Visserai OTK. So Bolton had to run Sabers against Visserai. And if you played Sabers against Prism, they would have 40 health when you comboed. So you would never win that. So Bolton had to be built as a switch deck, which is what I did for Indianapolis. And I think it performed all right. However, it was just, I could feel that there was like a bit of a power difference between my deck and these 3 decks, right? But now with these decks getting hit, and maybe more aggro decks coming into the format to harass Prism, I mean, Bolton is in a very good position, I think, right now, because his passive ability is very good against all of these heroes here. He has the ability to take down Guardians because he could just go Saber combo. So I think he benefited a lot from the changes here.
I agree.
Very, very high +1, I would say. I don't think he's quite as good as Chain, but very, very high +1 for
definitely think he benefited quite a bit, for sure.
Now when we were testing for Vegas, at the time, Bolton, when it ran Sabers, was very, very good into Chain. Josh, do you know how that looks right now when Bolton runs Sabers into Chain?
So when I play Bolton against Chain, I try to be a bit unpredictable, especially in a smaller tournament where I'm likely to face them twice. I basically will never do the same thing twice generally. So like if the first time I meet them, I'll play Fatigue, and then the second time I meet them, I play Raiden Aggro. Like it completely messes with them, right? I think in general, Bolton has the tools to compete with Chain, because as a warrior, you have a lot of 3 blocks. If you want to take the Fatigue route, you can. And chain generally has no disruption against your combo as well. So sometimes if what my default as Bolton is against chain is to play kind of either fatigue or combo, depending on whether I go first or second, and depending on what I draw. So if I stumble into the combo, I'm just gonna go for it, right? Because taking a round of damage, but then like healing like 10 is about the same, especially considering I outputted like 30 damage, right? So I think Bolton is fine against chain. I don't think there's really any major issues there, especially considering you can be so unpredictable. Like they have to play a pretty they have to hedge their sideboard against Bolton, which is just makes their deck, like if they guess wrong, then they lose pretty badly. If they kind of play middle of the road, then they're kind of neither do they're not fully prepared for fatigue, they're not fully prepared for aggro. So
okay, makes sense.
Yeah, so I guess the big question for me as a Bolton player going forward is whether or not I'm just going to play pure Raiden Bolton or just play a switch style. Because I think against this lineup, you could just run Raiden Bolton. But the thing is, you don't actually have to sacrifice much strength. I mean, you lose things like Battlefield Blitz, you lose your yellow Courageous Steel Hands, but then you gain a whole nother game plan. So it's like, that's something to test.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so I think we've talked enough about Bolton, putting him in high +1. Let's see here.
What about our other Guardian friend?
All right, so OG Bravo. Where do
-1.
OG Bravo.
-1.
Why -1?
All right. If somebody walked up to you and said, would you rather have Crippling Crush and Dominate on a Stick at 2 costs, or have Stag, Oak and Old, Crown of Seeds, Endless Winter, which one would you pick?
Not the first one.
Right. I mean, I can't think of
strictly bigger.
I can't think of one reason I would play OG Bravo over Oldhim right now, because we're in a meta where you are, as a Guardian player, looking to get cards out of people's hands.
Yep.
You don't want to dominate. You want them to give you their hand. Like
what specifically made him worse?
I mean, okay, so like his power level didn't change at all, but there's just no reason to play him, I guess.
Right. So he's a 0, right?
Okay, that's a fair argument. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure that out. Like I'm not honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably stays tier 2.5, but I mean,
right.
Sure.
Or 2. But the question is, did he like get actively worse?
I don't think anything happened to him.
I mean, nothing. Yeah.
The decision is still clear. We're still not playing him.
All right.
Right.
All right.
After testing a 7-9, I'm never touching that deck ever again.
All right. Speaking of another hero that had nothing happen to them, I'm gonna put Dorinthia at 0 as well.
I think a lot of these are still a 0. Some of them are still a 0.
So, Dorinthia is a deck that would be very good if this hero didn't exist. But
I think that could be said for a lot of
a lot of heroes would be good if Prism didn't exist.
Yeah. So I mean, Prism is creeping up towards LL, and I'm sharpening my Dawn Blade in anticipation for that. But basically, the Dawn Blade build is just not viable if more than 5% of the meta is Prism, because that's almost unwinnable. I would say, with the fact that, like, back in Las Vegas meta, it was already like 90-10, but the way that it's built now is 99.9 to 0.1 or something like that. Like I can't imagine. I bet if my brother like gave me 2 turns of, like, he didn't do anything for 2 turns, he would still beat me. Like that's how bad the matchup can be with Dawn Blade.
Flat down Orclight, reset the counter.
Yeah, exactly. So and the Axis build,
it might have got a slight bit better, but like, did it?
I mean,
the story is just Baby Bravo.
The main reason to play Axis Dory was to like specifically hunt Starvo, that was your only like really above average matchup. So I don't know. I don't think much changed for Dory. She's kind of just sitting there, kind of waiting. So I'm just gonna put her in 0.
Fair.
I want to talk about Dash
Do it.
because this and Dory, these two were the queens of the Crucible of War meta, where things were mid-rangey and the game was not completely broken, right? And they're the only thing on the ban list was Drone of Brutality. So
Good times.
Dash, I think Dash has been secretly like
She's lurker.
See,
She's one of them lurkers,
she's just been kind of waiting.
The secret.
I don't know.
assassin.
I don't know where I want to put her, but I think she got better just because. So Dash is one of those decks that can be built in 2 different ways, and the control version here no longer has to worry about OTK Visserai. Ironically enough, the Starvo deck can just break through the control Dash. Like no deck could actually control Starvo with D reacts because I literally tried it as Bolton. I was like, okay, Bolton literally has access to the most heavy D reacts in the game, and I put all of them into my deck, and it still doesn't work, right? So you can't control Starvo with D reacts. You control Starvo with on hit effects and ripping cards out of his hand. Okay, so Control Dash no longer has to worry about these two, and Control Dash has a pretty good matchup against most of these heroes up here. So this is kind of like why I wanted to delay talking about Dash till we had a bunch on the board already. Is like
Dash also preys on Prism.
Oh yeah.
yes. So like I don't know. She could even be up here.
Honestly,
I don't know.
Aggro Dash is also good against Chain.
Yeah, I think if you build your deck correctly and get a little lucky, you can race them. However, I don't know how the sideboard slots line up in a Dash deck now. That's the only thing.
Let's just look at it from theory, because that's all we have at the moment. We don't have like the testing with Dash. So the things that it's gotten since it's like we'll go back to your format that you referred to, right? The Crucible of War format, where she was one of the queens of the format. She didn't have this new card, Techlo Pounder or whatever it is, right? For this like hardcore aggro style play. I don't know if
T-Bone either.
Didn't have T-Bone, which is another 0 cost boost card, which is absurd for them. There's a few key cards, and it's got some tools to handle other decks, which I don't know how viable they are, but it definitely has some new resources to work with, right? So Dash has improved as a deck since then, but has been pushed out by power creep due to other things. So now that we're trying to balance the format a little bit more, what are those changes that Dash got enough to where it's actually going to be able to compete with the format as is? Can it compete against Chain? Can it compete against Briar? Can it compete against Oldhim, Prism, Starvo, all these things that are going to be running around?
So the only thing that makes me kind of question about Dash is that you got to build a deck that I don't think you can build a straight control deck or a straight aggro Dash deck, because I think then you have some polarizing matchups. I think you have to build the deck as a switch style deck. So
middle of the road.
Middle of the road, kind of like you either become control or you become aggro based on the matchup. And whether or not that's possible in an 80 card deck, I'm not exactly sure. Because the Dash deck lists were already quite tight. So with you got to add in your T-Bones, now you got to take out some cards, right? So I don't know.
And if they want to do that middle of the road, the historical problem with Dash has always been the fact that boost requires a very important keyword on your card, that it has to be a mechanologist. So whenever you try to switch, you have all of these usually generic cards that are coming in, hurting your game plan. So Dash used to, just board in a bunch of D-reacts against Chain, sacrifice the fact that it's going to go, and instead just try to sit back and wait them out, which it struggled with even then. So I still think Chain is just as fast now, so I think it's still going to struggle just as much now. But it's
Sure.
hard to say. It's hard to say. We don't have the testing. I
Alright,
think I think Dash is a better deck than it used to be. So
Sure.
I would say +1 from the bannings because it's worse matchup Skyheart. So
Sure. We'll put it. I think it's a bit ahead of Bolton actually. So we'll put him there. All right. Our favorite wizard, Mr. Kano. We don't have any Kano players here. Oh, we do. We have Michael that plays Kano and Blitz.
I've got him in deep. He just does not. Yeah, I got destroyed blip -3.
well here
Completely unplayable.
we can make this one real easy. You see all those red deck that went +1 and all the blue decks that went -1. Kano went +1.
It's very, very true.
That is a good point. Yeah.
So, these heroes, they don't, except for Dash, they don't really run. They have to sacrifice quite a bit to get AB.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So either a really
Even
high
if they do, they
zero.
can't utilize
Actually,
or-
I have actually talked to our resident Kano player already about this.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
he messaged me and was like, "What do you think now?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, just from an out, like, I've never played Kano before, but just looking at it as just a blanket view at the moment and just using theory, I mean, it just makes sense if Starvo goes down, if Oldhim goes down, if Prism goes down, like the things that it has trouble getting through, it runs circles around some of these red decks. So
I think you can already see like a little trend here of there's quite a few decks that got a bit better. So I mean, that's why in general I'm quite happy with this BNR. Is like, okay, now we have more decks that are a bit more viable, right? However, I don't know how viable these guys are down here. Azalea, did Azalea? I don't even know where to really put her.
-2 because she's Azalea.
You gotta
I can argue with that.
So the fact that all these aggro decks, are now gonna beat up on Azalea.
Azalea beats up on herself.
There really wasn't. Yeah, her greatest enemy is her hero card. That's all I gotta say.
Agree.
Her
I
armor.
These
Her
all these aggro
everything.
decks are gonna give her a little bit of an issue here. All right, we have the 2 brutes here left over.
Y'all were talking about Levia being maybe viable in the format before this.
Yeah, I put it -1 now.
Yeah, so -1 feels right.
Yeah.
So Levia had a very specific role in that you could play Club Levia, very low blood debt, and have a pretty decent matchup against Starvo. Running, Tunic with Pummel is quite disruptive. And then you had Scab Skins, so in theory you could, Michael, right? In theory, check out the week 4 match between the Loud Bros.
Next day, I got my butt kicked by Levia, so I mean,
in theory, maybe I'm just not good enough at Levia.
Yeah.
So in theory, because of the Scab Skins, she could deal with the Aura spam. She had a lot of 6 power cards, like 33%, not 33%, 33 of her 60 cards were like capable of popping. So in theory, she had a good matchup against Prism, and she didn't. The only issue, she was quite bad against Visserai, but
That's a theme in that last
Yeah.
format.
so
Yeah, well.
I don't know. I guess she goes down a bit. Yeah, sure. Her silver bullet roll is no longer, in theory, no longer needed. We've been moving Starvo down quite a bit. Eventually I want to come back and talk about,
Yeah, we will.
do we actually think Starvo actually got hit that badly? And Reinar,
Stay the same.
if you're a diehard Reinar fan and a very good pilot,
I mean, you could also
would
tend
say
to argue.
I would
You
say
could also say
-1.
-1 because I mean you have a lot of aggro. Like they're not blocking anyway, right? So like,
Exactly.
I've always put Reinar right next to Bravo wherever he is on the chain because they usually do
well-
a very similar thing. Bravo's
we'll put them next to each
better
other.
card, but
I think I agree
Mhm.
with that.
Okay, so like I said, I want to come back to talking about, we put Starvo pretty low here, and
I do think he's
So now-
higher than the than.
So now we have like a kind of like a more general picture. We have a lot of things nailed down. Do we think he's actually deserving of this position here?
Definitely a -1. For
sure.
our rest of our tier list to exist how we did it, you have to be -1.
I do agree with that because it makes the Prism matchup what was probably like a 60% favorite in Prism to now, because now they have to run the Michael Hamilton list where it's like more controlly and fuses less often, and that's obviously worse in the Prism. So
Well, actually, the list that we built with lightning surges and blinks and things like that, we're actually having really high success rates against Prism because
y'all did. Y'all had quite a bit of success against it.
Yeah, I mean, I played against 3 very good Prism players in Indianapolis and was 3-0 against it just with. Anyway,
let's ask our resident Prism player here.
Yeah.
Have you seen a metagame shift with how Starvos are constructing their deck? And over the last couple of weeks, and how do you think they're going to react to this? In terms
Not
of deck
really,
build?
because if you think about what is being affected here at the first level, Awakening not too useful against Prism. Prism generally has lower life anyway throughout the course of the game. Second, the change for the Earth card, 3 block, 2 block, it still pops, doesn't matter. And if you're going to block, you're going to block an aura that swings for 1 anyway. So fundamentally, it doesn't change too much. But they have to. I feel like that matchup is the same, in my opinion.
I would agree.
Yeah, it just hasn't changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's still Prism favored. Like, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I still think Prism's favored in that matchup.
Okay.
Yep.
So at Indianapolis, we saw Starvo with like about a 30% meta share, Prism with like mid 20s, and Visserai with about 20. So I guess if we could just shortcut it to 30, 25, 20, what metagame percentages do we expect from these 3 now going forward?
Starvo roughly the same.
So you think about 30% Starvo going into.
I think the Viscerai
One?
meta share is just going to get eaten by the aggro decks that do come in, and I think everything else will stay roughly.
So you think these 2 will still. They're unwilling to give up their,
I think the
Tier 1
Prism
fight.
share is going to go down by a little bit.
I think people are going to figure out a way to build, like, Prism is just so versatile. I think people are going to figure out a way to build it because, I mean, Prism won a calling with Chain being the best deck at peak. Like, there are different ways to build Prism and also handle the Guardians, which it can do because of its the way that you can play 2 different decks, just like you can with Bolton. But I do agree that maybe initially it's going to go down because, well, it'll stay the same to start with because people are going to start experimenting, right? And then as soon as we kind of figure out what's happening, that's when, like, if Prism's like, oh, I can build, like, I can play Sigil of Solace and I can play 8D reacts 12D reacts, and I can play all of these things and have like a fair game, and then still transition to my Prismatic Shield, because we have all these blue auras now, so like the Guardian matchups just become better without hurting your Starvo matchup. It's just going to matter, like, how many Katsus are there in the format, how many chains are there in the format. Like, that's the big thing, because if you still have the triangle, then Prism's still going to retain its meta share.
I think the people that jumped onto Prism because of Starvo are going to kind of shift back to their original aggro decks by a bit. I'm not saying she's just going to drop to like a 5% share, but I do still think net wise she's going to go down by just a little bit. Not by much, but it'll the ones that jump ship are just going to go like, I'll go play my other aggro deck now.
Prism is very similar to Oldhim and Lexi in that the people that love that deck really love their Prism, Oldhim, and Lexi decks.
If you'll notice, the only foil decks you ever see in this game are all Prism decks.
Yeah, and
Very pretty and very expensive.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't see the Prism meta share ever dipping below like 10
A certain
or
floor.
8.
Yeah.
There's a floor to it,
Yeah.
and because that, you know what I'm thinking about now that I just mentioned those 3 heroes and Chain, they actually have something similar about them. They were the first wave of Dragon Shield sleeves. Maybe they did some market research on this, and they're like, all right, where are all these, hardcore diehard fans?
No shit. Oh, whoa. We are getting into some conspiracy.
Number 5 would
I
probably
love
be
it.
Dory, actually. If I had to guess, number 5 would be Dory.
Well, it's damn sure not Visserai.
Yeah, Visserai was.
I knew that was coming.
Visserai was the Briar and Chain players reluctantly going, all right, I guess I'll play a little bit harder deck. And now that Visserai is here, I think people are going to jump ship on Visserai.
Oh,
I think Visserai made Flesh and Blood players better, though.
That's true. Yeah.
Mhm.
They actually,
amen to that. Amen.
that is true.
Very difficult deck.
So we're likely to see the. So we really think the Starvo meta share is about the same. Prism will drop off a little bit because of the aggro decks,
A number
and then
here or there, but
Visserai
I
will
think it's the
kind of
same.
transfer to these here, right?
Just kind of flavor of the week for the +1s, right?
Mhm.
And then,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like take your pick of the aggro decks. All right, so for those of you that are just listening to us, I will I guess we'll summarize the tier list that we made. So at +2 we have Chain standing alone. +1 from left to right we have Dash, Bolton, Lexi, Briar, Katsu, and Kano. At the 0 tier we have Oldhim, Dorinthia, OG Bravo, and Reinhardt. -1 getting a little bit worse from this BNR. We have Levia, Azalea, Prism, and Starvo. And -2 alone there at the bottom is Visserai.
Should be mine is dead, but whatever. Same thing.
So that's where
We're gonna make Viscerai work.
somebody's gonna be stubborn and they're gonna try.
Oh, there
That's
are
right.
some loyalists out there that are just gonna get
Yep.
heartbroken. That is what it is.
I think that there's a lot of
anyone?
yep. I mean they're one of the few decks that don't play their specializations. So I was like, why
Fair.
don't you look there and see what's there, you know? So
Logarithm ascendancy.
This will
Yeah.
be
Slogism Ascendancy, easy. That's
this will be Vegas all over again. Try whoever can beat Chain is gonna break the format.
Yep. I think that is a good summary. All right. Do we have anything else to talk about, or are we pretty happy with our discussion and our tier list?
Moment of silence for Viscerai. Not only did it get banned in this
I'm laughing at
format,
Nathan.
basically, but the very first living legend as well. So not only is Viscerai not playable in this format,
Dude, it was disgusting in Blitz. Oh man. I know
Not
Josh. Is,
Playable in Blitz.
I know Josh is
and
so
Neb-
happy it's gone in Blitz. I know it
And
is.
Nebula Blade, all the four
Rest in
players
peace.
in the world playing Nebula Blade.
Rest in peace.
Goodbye,
to
Nebula Blade. Yep.
You didn't deserve it, Nebula Blade. I think that's kind of it. Again, just
Yep.
for disclaimer, this isn't a
This
tier
is
list of
not
what we
a
think
tier
the
list.
best heroes are.
This
It's
is
just
not a tier list. Yep.
kind of a swing back and forth of if they got a little bit better, if there's promise with it, or if you're Viscerai. So that's pretty much it. Any closing words?
We see that the tier list is actually weighted slightly towards the positive side.
Yep.
I feel like more heroes are viable now. You're way less likely to see the same 3 heroes 10 rounds in a row. So
that was
that's gonna
very
be a good thing.
intended. That was intended by them, which I think was very nice
You-
of them. Very giving. Thank you, LSS.
Oh, I want to shout out to all the negative Nancys out there real quick. Because there's a
Alright.
lot of negative Nancys out there that think that, LSS has no idea what they're doing, and there's arguments both ways. But if you've ever played a competitive card game and you've ever had to deal with bannings or anything like that, it is incredibly hard to keep up with from their side of things. Incredibly difficult to balance.
Borderline impossible.
They make these cards years in advance, and they have a testing pool that is not the 400 billion players that play their game that find problems like that. They don't have access to something like that before they release something, so there will be mistakes, there will be problems, there will be issues, and this is their attempt to balance them, but they are not going to get it right all the time. There are going to be formats you don't like, there are going to be formats you love. You just have to find your niche in each format that arises and make the best of whatever it is, and trust in the company that's creating the card game that you play and that you like to play. Because there are too many people that are like, oh, I can't play Oldhim anymore. Guess I'm just not going to play Flesh and Blood anymore. LSS sucks. It's like, if that is your fragility in this game, then we don't need you here playing the game anyway, because this game is going to be here for a long time. There are going to be formats that are down here, there are going to be formats that are up here, and that's going to be player by player. Some people love Chain, they loved Vegas format, and some people hate Chain, they hated Vegas format. So it's player by player. So just enjoy what you enjoy and find a way to make the best of it. So
Wow.
I feel like that needed to be said, because there's a lot of people out there
Powerful.
that don't know card games, and
Too bad an hour into it, nobody's
can be
gonna hear
much
this.
worse. It can be much worse.
and just because your hero's not meta viable right now does not mean you should throw their sword into the ocean.
Yes.
Look at Josh.
keep-
He's so happy that Dorinthia is still at 0, and he's
Look at
just
Jo-
waiting on his day. He's so happy that it just
Counting
didn't get
the
absolutely
minutes.
crapped. Exactly.
You know what could
Exactly.
happen actually is the Reinhardt versus Dorinthia battle deck
that could
could
change
actually
everything.
actually give her a tool to deal Prism, and then she's now like at least tier 1.5. So
In Josh's hands, she'll be tier 1.5.
okay, yeah, sure. I'll be happy to play her. Although I'm totally happy with my boy Bolton for now. Yeah, and I've been enjoying playing some Katsu as well recently. So
Oh, we got to talk. All right, shoot.
yeah, there's a lot to.
We have a pro tour where we don't know what decks are going to be on coverage. That's exciting.
Insanity.
That's
And-
exciting.
And there's no major tournaments from now till the Pro Tour.
Mhm.
So it's like,
We got
all
what,
right,
3 weeks?
the
3 weeks?
LSS gave us a new format.
Yep.
They're like, all right, we pushed things gently or shoved things in the case of Visserai, all right, to the left and right, and now figure things out.
Somebody's going to break something, and it's going to be
Yep.
exciting.
It'll be us. Quote me now.
It's very possible that this tier list is completely wrong. Not
Oh,
tier list,
for
this,
sure. For sure.
Power shifting list is wrong. We will,
Chances
come
are
back
we
and
are.
take a look.
Chances are that we are wrong.
but
somewhere.
we made our best attempt at it.
Azalea could be +2.
Go away.
You never know.
Huh.
So,
Always a change.
so from tier 3 to tier 2, huh?
Mm.
You never know.
That
All
would be
right.
a stretch, even.
All right. I guess wrap us up, Kyle, and we'll get out of here.
That's a wrap. Subscribe. Again,
All
thank you
right.
so much to Michael for joining us tonight on this special
Thanks for having
occasion. We'll see you in another video, Michael. I know we'll have you on again very soon. So,
Sure.
but yeah, guys, have a good one. And if you made it this long, good luck. I don't know. Have a good night.
All right. See you guys. Take care.
Take care.
All right, we're good.
And a cut.